All right, happy Monday morning. I'm a little tired while making this video. I showed up this morning, my 9 o'clock student didn't show up. I'm assuming they probably just overslept or something like that. I texted them just to make sure they're okay. But then I started working on some piano practice and thought it was a good idea to make another video talking about goal-oriented practice. And I want to talk about it this time from the perspective of somebody who's not this isn't sort of the main thing that they do. It's a little hard for me to give tips and tricks to people whose job it's not to practice 5 hours a day because I've got a lot of stuff I have to do. So of course my practice is going to look a little different than other people's practice a lot of the times. So I wanted to use an interesting example, a piano example. That I've been working on for quite a while because I'm definitely not anywhere near a professional pianist. I did take piano lessons, not as a kid, but like in high school and into my undergraduate degree. I had a great piano teacher that taught me a lot of stuff, but I've really not taken on a whole lot of piano because I have enough to do with the violin, obviously. But when I do want to work on a piece, I have to be very goal-oriented and sort of very efficient because any time that I spend on it is really more for fun than it is for a job or something like that. So the way that I think about it and go about it is going to be a little bit differently. But I do like to play very difficult pieces on piano. So in other words, I still have to make sure I'm being very efficient and making sure that I'm being very goal-oriented whenever I do my practice sessions. So the piece that I decided to start working on about maybe half a year ago, I haven't been playing it a whole lot. That's the whole point. But what I've been doing, or the piece that I did pick, is a Chopin's Etude, the Winter Wind Etude, which if you haven't heard it, maybe I'll try to find a way to attach to this video so I won't waste your time trying to find it on my phone right now. But it's a very difficult. It's got this crazy right hand that goes kind of throughout the entire thing, and of course the left hand plays a melody as well, and they're very difficult to kind of sync together. So the piece itself already supposed to be very fast, which is very difficult, of course. Strange kind of intermix of rhythmic interlay, I don't really know how to even say it, between the left hands and the right hands. It's very difficult to get coordinated. So the very beginning of this piece starts with like a little chorale. I'm not that worried about playing chorale stuff because I've done that quite a bit, so I know how to get through that. So I haven't really practiced that part a whole lot yet because that's something I can kind of add later. So instead, the very first thing I did, of course, after listening to it a few times, finding a good piece of music. We can talk about that kind of stuff later. That's a different video. But once I have that part done, then I want to start kind of coming up with my plan of attack. My plan of attack for this one was, there was that chorale section. Like I said, I'm not going to worry about that until probably the very end because it's kind of the easiest part. So I started with at least the first difficult part in there. There's a lot of difficult parts in that piece. But I started with the first difficult part, which is just that first run with the chords in the left hand. I started, of course, finding a good fingering 4 and then practicing very slowly the right hand. And it's really this weird descending thing that kind of goes throughout the whole piano. So I practiced that slowly enough to the point where I could get it to where I can play it without having to look at it. And of course, that took quite a while. To break that down even more, I did, of course, look especially 4 notes at a time, or actually 6 notes. Technically, this one's in like groups of 6. So I would take 6 note groups. Look at the next one. And then, like I said, it's just a repetition. So that's one way in which knowing quite a bit about music can actually help us make our practice sessions efficient. So I knew it was just a replication that keeps going down. So if I practice it once up here, I just transpose it down and it's super easy. So a bulk of the practice was spent just in getting that set of notes down to the point where I could play it pretty well with a right hand. Now to talk about the left hand. The left hand's actually fairly simple. That's not the hard part. The hard part is starting to, of course, put those two together. So after I worked on, so talking about that goal-oriented practice, the first goal was get the left hand to the point where I could play it even if it was slow. And then, of course, the next goal can be to speed it up quite a bit. So I already did quite a bit of that. Left hand took me no time to learn at all. So as long as I can play it, I can usually play it plenty fast. I'm not going to have to play it any faster than that because remember, this right hand has to go super fast if this left hand goes fast. So in other words, this one's already ready. This one's the one that's got to kind of coordinate now. So the next step that I did was I went back to the idea of the 6 notes. But putting them together. So then the goal there, of course, is to be able to play all of that as note perfect as I can. I mean, I make mistakes every once in a while, but you want to try to get to the point where you can play it like 3 to 4 to 10 times in a row without making a whole bunch of mistakes or having to go back or have to think about it too much. If you're making a bunch of mistakes, I would just start to go slower. Remember to think about the goal. The goal is to get the left hand and the right hand together and to get the correct notes, of course. You have to add that to your goal. Make sure that the notes are correct. So in other words, taking a whole lot of time just to make sure the notes are correct, it feels like you're spending a lot of time up front in a practice session. And this is where a lot of people make a mistake because they'll think to themselves like, oh, I've got to speed this up. There's like no way I can spend all this time thinking about these 2 notes or something like that. But if you really understand those 2 notes, then everything from then you can just sort of build off of. So in other words, you never have to go back and fix those 2 notes, which can sometimes take even more time, especially if it becomes like an impediment that can kind of be a constant thing to work on. So after I got them together, then the idea was I had to just speed it up. I tried to play it. So a couple things I did to kind of work on that is I tried to play it through as note perfect as possible, as in no mistakes. So I would try to play it at least through 3 times slowly, perfect, quote unquote, as perfect as I can get it without making any big giant mistakes. Then once I was able to do that, then I could speed it up to the next speed, try to get it 3 times in a row. This is a good little method. It's one that I like to use a lot, is if you can get it 3 times in a row at a speed, then move on to the next speed, because otherwise you're spending a lot of time just sort of practicing the same exact thing that you just sort of mastered. So then the next step would be make it a little bit harder, of course. So after doing that for a while of going super slow, we're going to find out I might have to edit this video because I can't always play it super fast because it's still actually a really hard piece. So sometimes I still go back when I go to practice it. I'll still start out a little bit slow, kind of putting the hands together. I no longer have to take them that much separate unless I want to work on the speed of this one. That's another thing I've been working on. It's just the speed of this one since, like I said, this one's fast enough already. But here it goes. Almost. I'll probably edit that out. So I'll edit in a good version of me playing it a little bit fast, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video.